So you're at an event, networking event, conference, workshop, a neighborhood party, and someone walks up to you and asks you the most predictable question on planet Earth. What do you do?
Do you know how people hate being asked what they do because they have to answer it and they're all nervous and so forth and they dread it? And the people would go, yeah. And I'd say, I'm the exact opposite. I said, I'm laughing and I apologize. I don't do this on purpose. And it's true. I don't do this on purpose. But I know that when I answer your question, you are going to be so interested in what it is I do that we're going to have a really interesting conversation and maybe become friends from this.
I met the one person on planet Earth who loves this question. His name is Mark Levy. His claim to fame is he helped Simon Sinek find his why. Mark was a mentor of mine and was really shaped my thinking over the years. And so I have brought him today to help you answer the question, what do you do, in a way that actually makes people want to listen and tune in? As you're deciding whether to watch this video or not and tune in, I'll throw in one other little nugget. I paid Mark a lot of money to work with him. And this video is just free. You get to just absorb a pinch of Mark's wisdom today in a way that might actually help reshape the way that you introduce yourself every single meeting from this point forward. And so even if you're busy, I would suggest maybe pushing things aside from your desk and tuning into Mark for these couple minutes. Mr. Mark Levy, without further ado, hi and welcome. Can I just ask you, I'm picturing you at an event. There's like 400 people here. Someone walks up to you and asks, hey, what do you do? What happens in Markland?
Yeah. So I used to, in the past, I actually, something very odd would happen when people ask me what I do at a conference, important people. And I would start to laugh or giggle. I was like Joker from the movie. I was like Joaquin Phoenix. I would start to laugh, not hysterically, but I would like have to stifle a giggle. And they would say, "What's wrong? Why are you?" And I would say to them, I would say, "Do you know how people hate being asked what they do because they have to answer it and they're all nervous and so forth and they dread it?" And the people would go, "Yeah." And I'd say, "I'm the exact opposite." I said, I'm laughing and I apologize. I don't do this on purpose. And it's true. I don't do this on purpose. But I know that when I answer your question, you are going to be so interested in what it is I do that we're going to have a really interesting conversation and maybe become friends from this. And they'd go, okay. And then I would answer it. And 100% of the time they'd say, oh, you're right. And they would start asking me more. So I
This is the
think
hook for
that
the video. We just need to take that section and just like move that to the hook to the video. That's beautiful,
that's
Mark.
right. That's right. Thank you. I think that one of the reasons why people find elevator speeches or elevator pitches so intimidating is that they don't understand the background of the elevator speech and they don't know what its function really is. So the background, real quick, the background, there's a few different places where people say elevator speeches come from, but the one that I find most interesting in 1979, Philip Crosby, who is one of the famous quality gurus in the world, he wrote Quality is Free and Quality Without Tears and so forth. He wrote a book called The Art of Getting Your Own Sweet Way. And the first edition, which I read, didn't have anything in it about what we're talking about. But the second edition, the paperback that came out in 1980, he added a paragraph or a couple of paragraphs. And it said, if you get into an elevator with Mr. or Mrs. Big, it behooves you to be able to tell them who you are and what you're working on in case you ever need to come to them for resources that they can. So you should rehearse what it is you'd say in case you ran into the owner of the company in an elevator. And that's where the idea came from. But the thing is, When people think about elevator speeches, they tend to ask too much of their elevator speech. They think that their elevator speech is supposed to say everything about who they are, like why they exist on the world, what it is they're doing, how much, like they're scared because they think that an elevator speech should contain so much in it. That's asking too much of the elevator speech. The elevator speech is just a very simple communication tool. It's not supposed to justify your existence as a human being on Earth. That's not why it's there. It's just supposed to get you a couple of steps closer. It's like, the salesman in the 50s who would stick his foot in the door so that they could not close the door on your foot. It's that. It's just to get clear enough so they don't close the door on you. And so you actually should, instead of being intimidated by elevator speeches, you should know that no elevator speech should encompass everything you do. You should have different elevator speeches for everything you do, who you are, why you do what it is you do. You should have different elevator speeches for each product you have, each service, and so forth. You should just have a lot of different lengths and different styles so they become really, really easy to deliver because you're just delivering something very, very simple. I will give you an example,
Yeah,
if I
beautiful.
may, of an elevator speech. So when people come to me, they often come to me saying, I want magic from you. Like, I want some point of differentiation, some elevator speech that's going to change everything. And I tell them clarity first, magic second. And
Mm.
sometimes the clarity is the magic. You don't need anything additionally after it. So if we take who you are and what it is you do and we simplify it dramatically, not make it fancier or more complex, but simplify it, that's going to be enough. An example, and I just did a video on this, which is why I'm so conversant on it. It comes down. One of my clients, Tamsin, is absolutely brilliant. She's an executive coach and a keynoter, but she was, in my estimation, saying too much during her elevator speech. It was too fancy. So
Yep.
what, right, so we simplified it to just the clear essence of what it is she did. And when I say clear essence, I don't mean from some soulful place. I just mean in a like textbook way. It's like, tell us what it is you do. So here's a story that she told me a couple of weeks ago. She was in a co-working space and she had just gotten a gig as a major keynoter at a major conference. And she had heard someone else had gotten a gig as a keynoter at the same conference. So she's very friendly. So she very community minded. So she didn't know this other person. So she called them in the co-working space. She got on her phone and called them. And she used her simplified elevator speech, and it sounded like this. She said, I'm a neuroscientist. I study habits inside of organizations. I work with leaders and their teams on helping them get rid of the habits that are hindering them in their work and develop new habits, stronger habits that help them become better leaders, better marketers, better strategists, whatever habits they need in order to strengthen whatever their job is. So that's what I do. And Tamsin said, while she was in the middle of saying that elevator speech, an entrepreneur who she didn't know, who was sitting about 6 feet away, whirled around in her seat while Tamsin was still speaking. And she said, wow, just like that. And she gave Tamsin two big thumbs up.
Okay, so this is
And
it's
so,
funny. I was
yeah,
going to ask you a minute ago to say like what's the point of having a really good elevator speech, and you just answered it, right? It's like if you are able to articulate that and describe it, and somebody says wow, and then wants more or decides they want to work with you, this is actually this isn't just like makes you more comfortable answering the question. This is actually potentially transformational to your career, right? So value established, everybody's bought in. Who's watching is like, okay, yes, like I want the magic, and you said clarity first, magic second. Can I ask you to go back the first few words of Tamsin's elevator speech? I am a neuroscientist.
Right.
Can you break that? You
So,
like
yeah, a lot of people will tell you that you don't want to box yourself in when you're doing an elevator speech. You don't want to make it like tell people like in a plain vanilla way what you do because they'll lump you in with other people in your category and so forth. I disagree with that. I say that when you're with people, especially in person, they want to pigeonhole you. They
mm,
want to put you in a box, and you want to let them do that. You want them to put, because what
rewind, like just rewind 10, like 20 seconds, like
I say that when you're with people, especially in person, they want to pigeonhole you. They
mm.
want to put you in a box, and you want to let them do that.
That is very important because particularly, right, we were talking earlier, Mark, about every year I'm organizing this connector summit and this community of people who fall into the category of connector. These are jobs that are like across every industry, but the main thing is that a main part of the role is that they gather people. These are to the layman, these roles are ambiguous. Like if you tell someone you're a connector, it's like, what are you talking about? It's like, no, no, no. Find the box that will make somebody else's shoulders relax. Like give them a box to put you in and be okay with that because the conversation's not over. You're just letting am I understanding you right? That you're just letting the
A
person
hundred.
relax.
Well, because think about it from the other person's standpoint. They just asked you what you do for a living. And now you're saying some fancy thing like, I'm a connecting Sherpa, or, like you're saying some. And when someone does one of those fancy things to me, the first thing I want to do is leave. Because if you try so hard in order to explain who you are, but in a fancy, complex, salesy way, what it is I'm assuming is you don't have confidence in what it is you're doing, that you're trying so hard that you don't trust your abilities, or you just decided that you wanted to sell me. Even though I
Mm.
just asked what you do, you've suddenly entered a sales conversation and I did not give you permission to sell to me. So instantly, I think you're an a-hole if you start to do something too fancy with me. I just asked what it is you do for a living. So tell me in the simplest possible way. But here's an interesting way to do it. Here's a format that I created, that I teach my clients all the time. I created this 20 years ago. It's the idea of, you tell them what it is you do, like, oh, what do you do for a living? Well, I'm a facilitator. So I work with groups and organizations. You say it very, very simply, right? You say this, and you can even say who you work with. Like, and I've done facilitation at Google and Amazon and so forth. You could say this stuff. But then the key is you say, but I do facilitation in a very unusual way.
Mm.
And then you does that make sense? So
Totally.
you've gotten
Yeah.
people on base, they know exactly what it is you do, but then you bring up the groovy, unusual stuff once they've put you in. So let's say you're a leadership consultant. You'd say, oh, what do you do? Well, I'm a leadership consultant. I help leaders make decisions and so forth. I've worked with American Express and so forth. But I do leadership in a very unusual way. And if they're interested, they'd say, how so? And then I follow it up with this. I follow it up with, and this is classic sales letter. This is the classic structure from sales letter. It's problem, like here's the problem people, and I'll explain this in a second. It's the problem people are facing. And as a matter of fact, the problem's even worse than you thought.
Mm.
And here's how you answer it. So it would be like this. What do you do for a living? It's like, oh, I work with business people and creatives to help them overcome procrastination so they can get going on the projects that they're dragging their feet on, or the books they have to write or whatever. But I do procrastination. I help people break it. Like it's a tough thing to do, so I'm do it in a really unusual way. And if the person goes like this, they say, well, so the problem with procrastination is this. It's
Okay.
that when people try to tackle it, they they they're told to eat the frog for the, you talk about all the problems that get in the way of actually stopping procrastination. And then you say, so I do the opposite of all that, and then you talk about the work you do. Does that make sense?
Totally. And there's something when we were chatting last week, you said something that really struck me along this line, which is one. So it's problem, problem, problem. So for me, let's do an example. So first of all,
Yeah,
the box. If I'm on an airplane and somebody turns to me and says, "What do you do?" I have a variety of answers to that question, depending on who I'm gauging the person to be. If they look like they're 90 years old and have maybe been retired for 30 years, I have a response to that. If they look like they're wearing a suit and look like they're about to walk into an executive meeting, I have a response to that. But let's just say somebody turns to me on an airplane. What do you do? I'm a professional speaker. So this is the box that I'm like, you can just relax a little bit, and either that makes you curious or we're good. And I actually am okay with that invitation being optional for people.
right.
But then the bit after is like, because obviously any if you've watched any of the videos on the channel or followed We and Me at all, like squeezing any part of yourself into one or two words is just unrealistic. But again, that's not for you. So, like for what you said, it's not about justifying your existence on planet Earth. It is about letting their shoulders relax. So, okay, I am fill in box, and then I'll say, you know how if you're in a conversation or meeting or gathering, and someone's kind of repeating themselves over and over again, like you've already heard what they said, but they're repeating themselves, or people are talking over each other, or there's clearly like some weird power dynamics in the room, and this person never speaks, and this person always monop. I just make sure that that never happens. And it was that phrase that really struck me of like problem, 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 and I just make sure that never happens.
From what I had said last week when you and I were talking.
Yeah,
So it's knowing first that I'm a facilitator. This is for people listening. It's knowing that I'm a facilitator and getting like that people understand what that means. And then it's like, but I do it in a very unusual way. And it's like, oh, how do you do it? Well, and then it's, you know, how when you're in a meeting at work and you're supposed to, there's important things that have to get done, but like not only do they not get done, but arguments break out and so forth. And it gets even worse than that, because then when you're in that kind of conversation, people sometimes will resent other people and they'll carry being their resentfulness onward for like months or even years. And so, you know, it's that kind of thing. And so the work, what I do is I make sure that never happens when I'm facilitating. I blah, blah, blah. And then you do the inverse of that. You talk about it. But you're absolutely right. You first want to see if they want to hear that. So
yeah.
you begin with the plain vanilla stuff, like I'm a public speaker, and that might be enough for them. If they don't seem interested in knowing more, if they don't ask anything about that, then the conversation starts there.
It's funny. I'm realizing as I'm giving that example, I realize, ironically, I actually fairly rarely introduce myself with that box because I
Yes.
find that it's concrete enough for some, but it's somebody who isn't in a context where they're like attending conferences and seeing speakers or facilitator. Um, this is outside of their realm, and so I also, and I am actually just asking your thoughts on this. I'll also find myself saying something to the effect of I'm an entrepreneur. 10 years ago, I created this conversation starter card deck that's now used in schools and organizations all over the world. And so it's like that entrepreneur and then just a little quick cite of like a thing that I did or a little project. And that usually sparks more questions. So it's like giving people enough to be curious about if they want to be curious. But also I think the reason I hang on the I created which by the way, for everybody watching, this deck, if you've been like paying attention at all, the future focus We Connect cards, this would not exist without Mark. When I worked with Mark over the course of the year, we really landed together on this idea that The conversations aren't just to connect people. They're actually, the questions we ask are actually edit buttons to the future, which so cool, right? But very cool essence of an idea. But if somebody said, hey, Chad, what do you do? Oh, I host conversations that are edit buttons to the future. You would walk away, right? You'd be like, Pete, get
That
out of here,
right,
right?
because I would think that you were telling me your like creativity homework, like the
Right.
answer to your creativity homework. It's like I asked you what you do.
Yeah.
Why are you playing with me? Like
Yeah.
trust me, I don't. It's annoying. It's like,
Okay,
oh
so
God.
can I ask? All right, two questions, two more questions. If you were to give people homework, like get a blank piece of paper,
Sure.
spend some time you and yourself, give people homework to like craft some better answers to what do you do? To like try this instead, part of the title of this video. Um, what would the homework be? What would be the invitation
Well,
be
I,
for people?
I would, one of the first elevator speech formats, this one I did not create. I read this about 30 years ago, but people love this one, is the you know how when format. So, what you know how when is, if someone asks what you do, you would say, you know how when, and now you paint the picture of the kind of person you help having the problem that you solve. So, like, let's say you're about overcoming procrastination. Oh, what do you do for a living? You know how when leaders need to get important things done, but they never seem to do, the day just dissolves. They're like putting out all these fires and so forth. And then they're not even getting all the information that they need to make a decision and so forth, and like they start dragging their feet. Anyway, you paint this picture and then you say, well, what I do is I make sure that never happens for that leader. And then you say, what I do is I help them. And then you say the inverse of what you just did. So the homework would be write down the words you know how when. And you can do this verbally, just record it. You should fill in the movie of the prospect who you be speaking to, having the problem that you solve in as much detail as you want. You can go a minute or so, and you just keep on doing that and do it differently each time. It's revelatory. People have really, well, because it releases the constraints of I have to be brilliant. I'm just talking about the problem that I solve. That's all. It's not about me. It's
Yep.
about their life and the problems they're experiencing. So you
Yep.
know how, when, and then you talk about what the problem would look like. So that would be one homework.
So this homework is beautiful. I had another mentor, Matt Church, who always said, never leave a meeting with anything to do. So in this case, never leave a video with anything to do. In the comments, before the you know how when bit, right? That's like part two of answering what do you do in Mark's framework. Before that, remember, like let people put you in a box. And so that I am a fill-in word that somebody else would understand. That so their shoulders can relax. So in the comments, can you just drop just to see like who's watching this video also? Put yourself in a box. Do it. It's gonna feel uncomfortable. If you're used to describing yourself in this long verbose, like put yourself in a box. I am a, and just see what happens, see what pops out. And then over the course of time, the longer this video lives on the internet, we'll get a little library of examples of that I am a blank for folks specifically in this kind of connector, I lead and gather people role across all industries. 5 second pause. If you're enjoying this, me and Mark are in talks right now about having him facilitate something brilliant at the Connector Summit. If you don't know what that is, there's a link below, and you should totally check it out. Mark, somebody who's probably long dead said, save the best for last. And you are the best, and you've been the best throughout this entire video. What is, to actually put the best for last, what is one story that you just like, you need to share with people? You're such a good storyteller. What's one story that you'd be remiss if people left the video and didn't hear?
Do not let the elevator speech or what you say as part of your elevator speech scare you as far as length or anything. If you are honest in it, that's what people want to know. They want honesty above everything. And when you're honest in your elevator speech and the accompanying material that you say after, people go nuts. They will remember you forever. A very, very quick story. I was in the town next to me here, and there's a large speakers conference that's held coincidentally in the town next to me. And so one of my clients had gone to that conference. He and I knew he was coming, so we went out to dinner. And so we're sitting there at the dinner table, and a bunch of people come in from the conference. They see his face. They recognize each other from the conference, but they haven't spoken. So they wave to each other. And my client and I just keep talking. One of them walks over and introduces herself and says to my client, "What do you do for a living? Like, what do you do?" And I say, "Let me take this. You don't want me with you," or whatnot. And so I said, so my client does something really interesting. Uh, a few years ago, he was a computer programmer and he was doing work for the military. And his job was he was supposed to make a program that would help the military better handle troop deployment. And he finished the program and he was so insanely high from what a brilliant job he did that he ran down to the Pentagon with this program saying, "Oh my God, this is the best work product I've ever created. It does exactly what it is they want." And he went into the office, and the general he was working with wasn't there. But oh, there was a woman there. I don't know who she was, but she was there. She was part of the department. She said, "What can I do for you?" And he told her what he had done. He had created this program that would allow them to do troop deployment in a way they had never done it before, right? In a very efficient way. And instead of slapping him on the back and cheering him and throwing confetti like he thought she would do, the woman said, "I know what you're up to. You're here to get me out of a job. Like all of us, you're putting in this efficiency and it's about firing all of us. I get what it is you're doing. Well, let me tell you, son, that's not going to work here. I am going to make sure." And she was screaming at him for doing his job. And as he left, he thought to himself, here I am, a computer programmer. I'm so concerned about this X's and O work product when it's really the people who will make something work or not work. And so at that point, he decided to change his profession and he went into change management. It was how to work with people, because if the people didn't buy in, nothing would happen. So he changed his entire career around it. And the woman I said this to, she said, "Oh, wow." Again, going wow is a common thing. And so that woman went away. My client and I continued to talk. And when I looked back up, the rest of the table was lined up at our table in a line. There were like four other people and they were one behind the other. And I said, what are you guys doing here?" And they said, "Oh, we heard he has this brilliant story about who he is and what he's doing and why he does it. And we wanted to hear it." And so they were lined up like it was entertainment, one at a time. But I am telling you, and anyone listening, there are interesting, honest details about what it is you do that you think are really boring or so. But if you just told people about them, they would freak out.
That, Mark, that was not troop deployment. That was truth deployment and end scene. Mic drop. Have an awesome day.